Good afternoon, everybody. Christy from Getting Into Prepping. This afternoon, I just quickly want to talk to you about something that came to light, and that is fear. Fear is not necessarily, or it's not a good thing to start off with. Fear is a bad thing as a rule, because you only fear things that is threatening to you, or that is threatening your life. You fear those things. So fear, to start off with, is not a positive thing. Now, talking about fear, if we have a look at what is currently going on in the world, it's very easy for people to become afraid and to fall into the trap of fear. It's very easy to say we fear this, we fear that, we fear the petrol price going up, we fear war going on in Europe, we fear the war in the Middle East, we fear the elections coming up, we fear the results of the elections. So fear is a very, very real thing, and a relevant topic in today's life and date. Now, in my view, fear can have two effects on you. Fear can either be a incapacitator, or it can be a motivator. If I say incapacitator, is that fear can make you so fearful that you actually become numb. You do not take any action. You are actually paralyzed by fear. Now, that type of fear is, or that reaction to fear, according to me, is not a very good reaction, because if we have a look at what I once went to a church service where the pastor actually talked about fear, and out of a study that was conducted, less or more than 90%, I nearly buggered that one up, more than 90% of the things that we fear never happen. So fear is a thing of we anticipating a problem or a result, and 9 out of 10 times, according to that specific study that was done, that result or that effect doesn't even realize or materialize. So in other words, fear is almost a how can I put it, it's almost a stupid thing, to say the least, because we are fearing things that 90% of the time don't happen. So 90% of the time it doesn't have an effect on you, and because of that 10%, you actually become passive, or you don't react, and you become incapacitated. So don't let that be the result of fear on your life. So that's the first one, fear that it can incapacitate you. The second one is fear can actually motivate you. Now, those who know me know that I was a bang gat, as a small laity. I was scared of most anything, because I was a maar oukie, a small little guy, and yeah, fear was kind of like part of my protection, if you want to call it like that. In actual fact, fear is kind of like a protector that protects you from you doing things that is dangerous to you. Fear actually stops you from doing things. Sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's not a good thing. But yeah, I was a very fearful little lighty, up until about the age of, I think it was grade 2. I don't want to tell you the story because it's, yeah, but what it boils down to is my grandfather, Opa Botus, taught us to stand up and to fight. No matter what the odds are, you stand up, you fight, and like I've said before, you fight like the third monkey at Noah's Ark. You fight until the last drop of blood, until there is no more fight left in you. But that's not the point I want to get to today. So what I want to get back to fear. The second thing about fear is fear can be a motivator, and it should be a motivator. If you fear something, plan on how to counter that fear. Let's say, for instance, you're planning a bike ride, but you are scared of riding the bike. Now, how can you counter that fear? You can counter that fear by before the time, make sure that the bike is in a good condition. Before the time, make sure that you know how to ride a bike. You can study the route that you're going to ride. You can prepare by having rest points in advance and all that type of things. So fear can be a motivator, and that can lead you to prepare. So with the things that's currently going on in the world and the fear that is associated with that, don't let that fear become an incapacitator, but let it rather be a motivator. Go and sit down and decide on what you fear, what is your things that you fear, and once you've identified those fears, start working on a plan to counter that. Start working on a plan on how you're going to stop that. Start working on a plan on how you're going to prevent that from happening to you. So with that said, let's start looking at what is going on in the world. What is your specific threats? Because you are not scared of anything else than a threat. So once you've identified that threat, please start working on that threat and start working on a plan how to counter that threat. Because by doing so, that fear that you are feeling at that specific moment will turn into a motivator, and it will motivate you to actually make a plan to counter that fear. So don't let fear become an incapacitator. Let fear be your motivator. Let fear be the thing that help you to start preparing and start working on your plan on predicting the outcome of situations and being ready for situations. And then also, like I discussed in the previous video, as soon as you start fearing, panic also sets in. But if you are prepared, then that panic will dissipate and the fear will dissipate, and you will be ready for that. And knowing that only 10% of all bad things that we are fearing happens to you will also help you in that motivations. So with that being said, I'm encouraging you to identify your fears, start working on plans on how to counter that fears, and get into prepping and get prepping. So with that said, thank you for the time that you spent with me, and see you in the next video. Get prepping.